Hi, folks. I'm Matt Leavitt. I'm the agronomist for Forever Green, primarily supporting growers through partnership with Minnesota Department of Agriculture through the ECO program, which you heard Colin mention a little bit earlier. But I'm really pleased to elevate this next group of folks. So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about research. We've talked about market pull. We've talked about policy. We've done some deep dives on some of our crops. The last constituency we have to elevate, and I wouldn't be a good agronomist if I didn't say this, the most important constituency is the farmers out there putting their livelihoods on the line to actually grow these crops and scale them with their own land, their own resources, and really kind of putting these practices, out there into the landscape with their own real money and sweat equity. And we are very fortunate at Forever Green to have a very wide and vast coalition of farmers all across the spectrum, from folks that are all in to folks that are supportive and maybe looking for ways to dive in. And so we want to elevate all those folks. So first off, we're going to go down the line and introduce Kimber from Kimber Contours, longtime collaborator with Forever Green, grows Kernza and hazelnuts, and serves on the board of the Perennial Promise Growers Co-op. And Schwagerl, a longtime collaborator as well, also wears many hats in addition to Farmers Union Vice President, but has grown winter camelina, Kernza, amongst other crops. Kristin Weeks-Duncanson, large-scale corn and soybean farmer, and has been a longtime supporter in the policy realm for us. We're very pleased to have them here. And then Haslett-Marroquin, who you heard about, Tree Range Farms. This is the progenitor of that whole system. So really pleased to have kind of this cross-section of producers here. And I'll just gonna go down the line with Kurt. Talk to us about your own journey with CLC agriculture, if you could, in kind of 3 to 4 minutes, and how it's fit into your production system.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Wonderful to be here in front of everyone. This great convening. Let me see my personal journey. I look out into the future, and it's, at least to me, it's very apparent there's some wicked problems were mentioned yesterday, I think, ahead of humanity and the biosphere. And so I think a lot of what we're doing with our farm and is to trying to respond to these challenges that are in front of the biosphere. It's been just a wonderful opportunity to be able to collaborate with Forever Green on these alternatives to conventional agriculture. So we're a certified organic farm, about 200 acres tillable, and we've been able to basically do the continuous living cover crops on a part of our farm, and then the rest of the farm has been, our mission is to grow food for people, so plant-based food is what our focus is. So we grow food grade soybeans, small grains, Kernza, of course. And then we also get some canning company crops for, we've grown sweet corn and we're growing green beans. But so I'll leave it there.
Am I next?
You are next.
I'm great. Is that kooky energy time of day that we have found ourselves at. Look, I'm Ann Schwagerl. I'm a farmer in western Minnesota in Big Stone County. I farm there in a generational farm with my husband and my father-in-law. And we have gone in our 13-year cropping years through a fair bit of iterations on our farm. We have been a conventional non-GMO farm. We've been a certified organic farm. And our current iteration is that we are a no-till conventional farm. But we have seen in the last 13 years what we're calling abnormal is the new normal. And I'm looking out here at a room full of friends and know that I'm preaching to the choir here, but for us, we started getting into continuous living cover crops. In August of 2020, we planted our first Kernza field in partnership with our friends at our local SWCD and Forever Green, because we were looking for ways to mitigate risk on our farm. Knowing that, our cash crops, our corn, our soybean crops remain our major sources of income on the farm, but diversity is one of our risk mitigation strategies. So since we didn't have enough fun growing Kernza for 3 years at that time, but a year later, we decided to make ourselves even more infamous in the coffee shop by planting some winter camelina. With the M-Bold partnership that the pilot project that was referenced earlier. And we really liked camelina and the way that camelina can fit into our farm. And we've planted camelina 2 more times since then. I'm the ground truth, it's not always sunshine and rainbows example, because we had winter kill on our camelina this year, resulting in a crop failure. But we are using the ECO program to help mitigate that risk. Again, risk mitigation being key on our farm as a proto crop insurance strategy for us. While we wait for RMA to get their act together to provide crop insurance. Don't laugh at that idea. On our farm, and I guess I'll leave it there.
I'm Kristin Weeks-Duncanson. My husband and I own Highland Family Farms in central Minnesota, south of Mankato, Minnesota. Pat is 5th generation. My claim to fame is I went to the same high school as Mitch Hunter.
Oh boy.
And Amy Klobuchar went with us too. Amy's my age. I'm obviously old enough to be Mitch's mom, so if you know how that works. Anyway, my husband is 5th generation. This is new to me. I claim that that's a huge advantage because I've had to learn it all, and it's innate to him. Sometimes that flies, sometimes that doesn't. Anyway, we are corn, soybeans, rye. We love growing hybrid rye. We take it to seed. We've had some success in selling it. We love growing it as weed control and as cover. We do a lot of different, if you saw our farm right now, you would say they are crazy because we have lots of different iterations of cover crops and tillage practice all over. We also have a presence in the hog industry because we still want to be full circle. It's not that we enjoy losing all the money on pigs. Please buy bacon. Just put it in your freezer. You don't have to eat it. Give it as hot. When people trick or treat, give them bacon. Pork, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. But manure to us is part of the strategy of how we do our whole full cycle. And after everyone gets a minute, I just want to go over, and it's not news to you, how we make a decision on how we're going to change something on our farm. One of my life mistakes was I married an economist who is also my business partner. Great guy, you'll see him around campus here, but everything has a P&L. Everything gets really, really down to what are we going to do here? So I'm going to let it go at that, and we'll circle back and talk more about how we all make decisions on what we're going to do.
Awesome. Well, we're having fun already, I see. My name is Reginaldo Salvatierra Haslett-Marroquin. You killed my father. Prepared to die. That works so well in Salina, Kansas, where I was standing in this podium, and everybody had hats on, and I couldn't see a single face, and I was freaking out. So that joke, apparently most people know what it means, so it was pretty cool. Because I do have a long name, and I do live in Northfield, and my farm is called Salvatierra Farms, and I'm part of the Regenerative Agriculture Alliance, and with Arnulfo and Diane, who are up here, and Diane, you just heard from her, and we are part of what we call the Poultry-Centered Regenerative Agroforestry System, production model. And out of that model, we expect at least 14 enterprise sectors to come together as a business ecosystem, which then is stacked and aligned with on-farm-based operations that then feed into that ecosystem of enterprises. Out of the 14 that we originally mapped out, we have launched farms. We have launched production farms for chickens. We have launched a processing facility out of Stacyville, Iowa. We launched the brand Tree Range Chicken and the company behind it. We also launched many of our own businesses like Salvatierra Farms, a consulting business, an online training facility called regionpoultry.com. All together in property, plant, and equipment, we went from, and I'm sure, Mark, I'm gonna put you on the spot because I know Mark likes the anonymity, but here's the thing. In 2018, I started the Regenerative Agriculture Alliance to align with a lot of the work that was going on here. I had been invited multiple times to do capstone classes for Don Wise, and so I really loved everything that was going on. He spoke to my upbringing in the rainforest, growing 35 different stacked enterprises on a single farm, on a 30-acre farm. And so that really, I wrote a book, it's called In the Shadow of Green Men, My Journey from Poverty and Hunger to Food Security and Hope. And that really is the story of how we use these multi-strata perennial cropping systems to actually go through that whole process and become really prosperous in the context of rural Guatemala, where really everybody struggles for daily stuff. And so when I came into this space, that's what I was looking for. As an immigrant, as somebody who has a degree in agronomy and also a business development, a business management degree and so on, I was just not interested in conventional crops, period. And these guys, Forever Green, Don Wise, everybody really was talking my language, but how do you make a living out of that? That was the first question. I mean, I'm also really keen on economics, and so with that, well, we need the perennial crops, absolutely. Our entry point became the chicken, but then the model for production had to be aligned in a bifurcated system with a similar enterprise system on the opposite end. Otherwise, you end up stuck with 20, 30% of the value of what you grow on a farm. 70 to 80% of it is captured beyond the farm, and you never see a penny. So I'd rather have a $10,000 operation on the farm that makes $8,000 that I can keep as opposed to a $1 million operation where I get to actually go in debt every year. You see what I mean? And so that's the math we do. And so I know that you guys identify with this. So anyway, and I do understand the 5-minute thing, but so the thing is, the questions were, I mean, Matt was kind enough to give us some guidance, which is great. Now I'm following it. My farm is in alignment with all of this work, and we really, really are appreciative of all of this work on perennial crops, because even though I'm not going to do Kernza and probably won't do Camelina sativa, we will, as a result of our deployment of the system, deploy the understory for the hazelnut and the chicken. You may not know whether the chicken and the egg were first, but you do know which one was first in the chicken and the hazelnut. I'm telling you this, many thousands, hundreds of thousands of years ago, the hazelnut and the chicken made a pact. Guaranteed. If you can listen to how nature speaks, you will learn this very quick. That's how I came into the hazelnut, meaning the hazelnut called us, me. And if you look at the phenotypical characteristics of the hazelnut, it is very much in alignment with the phenotypical characteristics of the chicken. The chicken can't withstand open air. It needs a full canopy. It poops a lot of nitrogen. The hazelnut needs a lot of nitrogen. If you look at the phenotypical characteristics of the hazelnut, it absorbs 80% of its energy within the first 6 to 8 inches of soil. It does it in a spread of over 15 feet in diameter. It actually grows in a way that doesn't allow for predators to perch on it, which actually was part of that agreement with the chicken. And then the chicken gets scared if it's out in the open, and it runs under the hazelnut cover, and then what it does after it gets scared, it shits, right? So you have to understand that this system's thinking, I came into this from a systems perspective, not from a crop growing perspective. And so we use the whole scientific validation of the biophysical and chemical processes that determine the transformation of energy on the farm and any ecosystem, from non-edible energy to us, but edible to trillions of other creatures, to edible to us in a way that we can harvest and then market, process it, and make it into final products. That's the blueprint of our system. It's called PCRA. That's where the chicken comes from. We're not in the chicken business. We're in the business of reinventing the way we manage this magnificent geoevolutionary ecological blueprint called the Midwest.
I want to know if you ever sleep. You are the busiest man in agriculture.
Oh
Do
yeah,
you
I sleep.
Okay,
Yeah, I
good.
get knocked out here and there.
Are you also sleeping under the hazelnuts too?
No, the chickens will eat you clean. Huh?
Kristin, to your question, I think it's a really good prompt. How do you make decisions? How does new decisions, new crops get brought into your operation? And what is that thinking and process like for you?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And I know that every farm is unique, and we appreciate that. But there are similarities, I think, between folks, no matter what the scale is of decision making. We have an organic division, we call it. It's 100 acres right now certified. We farm about 3,000 acres total. And we have another 250 acres in transition. We are lucky in that those transition acres, we've been able to capture a food grade soybean that works for transition that adds the value. The part of making decisions too is knowing your neighborhood. The food grade soybeans are 6 miles down the road to go in a container to be shipped out the PNW. A neighbor, okay, it's Aaron's dad, is who we work with on those kind of opportunities. So seed for Syngenta, 11-mile haul to the west. That adds some value to what we would call our traditional cropping acres. We're about 80% of cover crops at any given time right now. There's 20% not, and it's the organic. We haven't quite figured out how to do that yet. But I think one of the things that really struck me today, and none of this that I'm going to say is new about decision making, you've all heard it before and heard it here today even before, is when we're making a decision, we have a really good team that we work with. Anna is one of our members of our team. So when we are pushing a pencil on should we do camelina now or should we wait, Anna's part of that conversation. And Matt is part of our conversation. Our conversation also includes our lender. Have to have our lender be part of that. We could go ahead and just say, oh, we're going to do this, but our lender really needs to be part of that. And we've never had our lender say no, but yet always ask great questions about what does this do to your crop insurance? What does this do to your farm payments from FSA? Who can be your partner here? What does that contract look like? Have you run it through your attorney? Is that a contract valid? The other relationship that I think, and we can talk about seed and equipment, do we have it? Two other things that really hone true with us is we own half of what we farm, we rent. It's the landowner that we don't need necessarily their permission, but it's nice to have their blessing if we're going to try something new or different. Even getting some of our landowners to agree to doing cover was tricky because that's not what they're used to. Let's face it, landowners are oftentimes either retired farmers or in our case, retired farm spouses or grandchildren that have, and they do not live in Blue Earth County. So making sure they're okay with what we're going to do. The other thing we really balance is time. Timing of some of the new crops means that something else isn't going to be done or needs to be moved in our schedule. We live in a very seasonal, funny place here in Minnesota. So if we're going to pull out camelina, for instance, what month does that happen? Who's going to clean it? When's that going to happen? Where will it be stored? Does that bin need something else in the fall? So when is it leaving? How guaranteed is it that that crop is going to leave? Oh yeah, I have 5,400 bushel of rye. Anybody want it? Okay, great. Rye did really well for us at the beginning. We were able to sell it to a couple distilleries. It was super fun, a lot of work, but great fun. We made a lot of money. Right now, the price of rye that I can sell is 90% of the price of corn, and it'll go as a feed. That's great. We can take stuff for the team or proof of concept regarding feeding rye to livestock, but at 90% of corn, it's tough to do and ship and get it there and yada, yada. So it stays in a bin. What does that do to having another crop? Because we need that bin, a bin for, you can only use certain bins for certain crops, all that kind of thing. And then what can we displace to do that we need to be doing if it's a new crop? In other words, usually June for us is heavy spray season. Are we marketing and sending and shipping a crop? We have some people that help us and work for us, but the cost of labor and availability is really an interesting question. Not insurmountable, but one that we have to consider as we consider making change to our system. And like I said, being married to an economist is not the greatest. What's even worse is one of our two sons that is coming back into the business is also an economist. Yeah, you know, I kind of blew it on that one too. But it is what it is. So just those kind of things that we are huge proponents of continuous live cover or green all of this. Very, very, but it has to make economic sense, and we can only do so many proof of concepts. If someone's around later, I'll tell you about the year we grew purple corn. Yeah.
Is it like my years growing blue corn?
Yes, it was very tall and it tipped over.
Oh, mine tried to die as soon as it came out of the ground.
Yeah.
I would say I did not marry an economist. What we do instead when we try to make decisions is that we're big fans of, we're enrolled in farm business management on our farm.
We are too.
And our instructor is that guy that says, well, how is this going to pencil out? And we have a P&L for everything as a result. He's the fun hater who comes out when I'm like, we're going to try something new. And Darren comes out to the farm and he's like, how are you going to pay for that? How's that going to work out for you? And the other thing that I'd add on with your kind of conversation about decision making and the needs for farmers to adopt more diversified crop rotations in grain country, certainly. The needs are deeply unsexy things.
Yeah.
Most of my neighbors have 2 grain bins on their farms now. They have a giant corn bin for drying corn in and a soybean bin. And so asking them to grow a third crop that they're going to have to store for some time, an unknown amount of time, right, is physically impossible. So when you're saying, why won't these farmers just adopt more and take more risk and do, and P.S., it's not insured. And it might threaten your farm program payments. Those are things that are these big systemic things that are they're not fun to talk about, but they absolutely need to be mitigated in order for us to get scalable adoption of CLC crops.
Thank you so much for those reflections. Kurt or Rehi?
Sounds like you're going to have to become an economist.
No. I am a social scientist and an artist by background.
And hold on to it. Yes, we need that. Oh, I was just joking, of course. But yeah, we need good economics, good data, and all of that. And I started telling you a story about Mark Mueller and the McKnight Foundation. And in 2018, when I started the RAA, I went back to Mark, and there was no capital, nothing, not even the legal structure. And I used a fiscal sponsor. But Mark had access to $100,000. We put that $100,000 into our budget, and we started the RAA. And today, 7 years later, we have built an ecosystem of enterprises that if you add it all up, all the property, plant, equipment, non-tangibles, is close to $30 million. So anybody who wants to bet on returns on investments like that, welcome. But that's real data. We have now 3 core operations that are the processing facility, the branding, marketing, and distribution of our chicken, which is the first one. And by the way, the reason it's connected is because when you look at the 3 layers, the RAA, main capitalization, all that, the processing facility, the 18 plus workers that are employed there, plus all the farms, 11 farms in the system and all of that, what you end up with is an ecosystem. But unfortunately, there is no financial models to actually evaluate ecosystems of businesses. Everybody goes the linear way. Do the business. What is your business? What is your proposition? What is your P&L? What is your... But never is there a model to analyze ecosystems. We actually do that. We have a model that analyzes the whole ecosystem. And how does that connect? Because agriculture is superbly risky. Aside from buying the lottery, that's about as risky as it gets. And so if you're going to go into that space, I always tell people two things. First, know why you're going to do it, because even if you don't make income, you know why. In Guatemala, we say, if you don't know where you're going, every bus takes you there. And unfortunately, that's how people jump into agriculture many times. That's the first one. Number two, if you're not completely sure of that, and you get that urge to go farm, lay down until it goes away. So, with that in mind, the continuous living cover for us is critical, but it had to make financial sense. Now, the hazelnut, for us, doesn't have to make sense, as long as it makes sense to the chicken, because the chicken is what we're going to sell. Now, it just happens, too, that since nobody knew which varieties, which cultivars or whatever you were supposed to plant, to me it was like, awesome, let's plant them all. So we planted them all. Sure. And over the last 18 years, relax, because we don't need to sell the hazelnuts to keep the farms going. We got income within 6 months after we started the farm. And here's the other thing. The chickens were like, wow, dang, man. So this partnership gives us protection and everything. So, okay, in exchange, we're going to fertilize and we're going to weed your hazelnuts. No cost for us fertilizing and weeding, right? Sure. So fast forward, we are now harvesting hazelnuts. And because the work continue on continuous living cover, we can process them. Will Crombie at the organic compound and Carly Crombie decided, well, Gwen is going to sell the food truck, and then figured out the $42,000 or whatever that they needed, bought it, and now they are our main catering business. Guess what they serve? Chicken, and now they got hazelnut salads. Hazelnut, I don't know if they got oils yet, but we pressed it before, which you can sprinkle it. And by the way, in Europe, it's a substitute for olive oil. It's super healthy. And they also started serving hazelnut donuts right into our places. And since we bring so many people, all of you are invited, by the way, to come and cater your lunch right at our farm. And then Will Crombie and Carly get to sell more hazelnut products at a markup of, probably 400% or 500%. Wow. Now, this is where this beginning of things work. This is how we make it work. And it does pencil out. But the name of the game in this stage is strategy. It is in the crop. It is in the market. It is the strategy that adapts to the conditions and that capitalizes on what we already have, as opposed to always going after what we don't have, whether it's markets or capital. The Dalai Lama wrote a book. It's called The Art of Happiness, and it is exactly based on that, and it just happens that it translates to business management as well.
Kurt, any thoughts on how you make decisions on your farm, how that's played out, or if it's changed over the years?
Yeah, I would have to say we haven't been very structured, and it's been more of looking at the ends as and dealing with the means kind of chaos that comes along with it.
Gotta love it.
That's great. I wish you success. We're all here to help. No, thank you for the good questions. I really appreciate all people's perspectives here. So one of the things that floated to the top of the list for me is, have you folks seen any neighbors or fellow farmers start doing continuous living cover crop practices after seeing what you're doing? And do you do any outreach about this? And I would say on the flip side of that, what are the barriers for farmers in your area not trying things that are proof of concept kind of on your own farms? Whoever wants to take that first.
I'll start that one first. I think you're talking about peer pressure, Matt? And to a certain amount of time that does, just having people stop and ask us, why is that green, has been helpful. You know, why is this green in late December? I think that's been helpful. I wish I could tell you that, yes, our neighbors are doing exactly what we're doing, and we're very glad. They're not. And part of that is there are some, of course, who are trying it, and it's a journey. It's not always fail-safe, and you have to be ready. Whoops, that's okay, dear. You have to be ready to make changes. Once you've done it one way, the next year, could be totally different. So you have to be willing to accept that as part of a journey and not the end result. And so it has been slower. I will say one of the things that we've really noticed in the last 10 years is more of a neighborhood conversation, and there are like-minded people who are willing to visit about what they're doing that we didn't notice. Remember my neighbor Dave? I talk about my neighbor Dave all over the country, because I have 4 neighbors named Dave. They're excellent farmers, and they don't know which one I'm talking about. Any given time. Phenomenal farmer. Rows are straight, crops look great, not a damn amount of conservation anywhere. And last week when the wind blew, his topsoil is now in Iowa. And that's great, I like Iowa, but I don't want my topsoil to go to Iowa. Whereas our CLC acres, it didn't blow. I mean, a little, yeah, but not like that. So it's slow. Remember that the soil and water conservation districts were started after the Dust Bowl because of the issue then. And we started doing work by watershed then and by landscape instead of political boundaries, i.e., you live in Blue Earth County, this is what you can do, blah, blah, blah. I see a resurgence in that. We certainly at our house try to encourage that, but we're not, it's just slow. And you just have to remember it's going to be slow. I will end my portion of this saying, Pat and I know we are the luckiest people alive. We get to do what we want to do, and we're kind of masters of our own future. And as I end a lot of presentations I do, it's a great day to be a Minnesotan because of where we are and what we can do and the partnerships and relationships we have here. I got to go to Kurt's. I've been to this farm. We share that way too with like-minded folks. So as much as I may sound like Debbie Downer at times, we feel incredibly lucky.
I think Paul Novotny is the most peer pressure farmer here. He should be the one to give tips. I don't see necessarily acres of camelina being grown in Big Stone County outside of my farm. That's fine. I do see my neighbors doing one less tillage pass. And I see and I hear in the coffee shop my neighbors talking about how, you know what, they're dropping down to 150 pounds of nitrogen this year instead of putting up 180, right? That's progress that you don't see from the field, from the road, but it's not nothing, right? And the way that we farm now is a lot different. We have a lot more tools and opportunities through precision technology to move the needle. And I am seeing rye out there consistently in the winter. Not everywhere, not often, but is popping up more and more as a consistent cover crop that my neighbors who are large scale producers who are starting to toss out there after soybeans, and my local elevator is now taking rye. The price is crap. Oh, it's horrible, but it is. They are buying a third crop where they used to only buy corn and beans. That tells me that even though you don't see it from the road, it happens. My job, my off-farm job with Farmers Union, it's so fun because I do get to go out and talk to farmers all across the state and hear from them. So even if I don't see it necessarily next door in Big Stone County, it's happening. The transition is happening and it's on farmers' minds. So it is cool.
Well, there is definitely no expectation on our part that the corn and soybean farmer next door is ever going to adopt our system. But they may. I don't know. Maybe once we start buying their corn, and then we set up a new standard, and we say we'll pay you actual decent price, and we will actually guarantee you for as long as we're in business, you will be a priority to supply us. Guess what happens when you actually set standards and contracts and all of that, and then you come to the neighbor and said, and this already happened. Dave Legvold is one of our neighbors. Many of you probably know they are very famous because they have done no-till and all of that, but they didn't do it because of us. The first thing Dave asked me when I asked him if he would grow alley crops for us, corn and alleys instead of just, monoculture, he said, "Are you hazelnuts Roundup ready?" I mean, that's fine. It's a legit question. He has to do that, right? I'm not criticizing him. I'm just like, that was my ignorance. Why would I ask him that? But he was doing cover crops. He was already doing winter cover. He was already, for 20 years, have been doing no-till. So awesome, but not because of us. Now, on the flip side, in Guatemala, 150 farms deployed in the Highlands because of what we did in Minnesota. And in Mexico, I was hired by a company to go and deploy a region in Guanajuato, in San Miguel de Allende, because of what we were doing in Minnesota. And then I was called by 9 region chiefs in the border between Colombia and Ecuador to go train their science teams on how to do this system in Colombia. We adapted our system to over 50 different overstory and understory species, including 8 species in the northern rainforest of Guatemala.
So one of the themes today has been markets. Farmers need markets if they're going to do something different. Some of the things that were mentioned here where farmers can, integrate them into their existing system without, making, big changes. Those are opportunities. Jason talked about infrastructure in his hazelnuts. Inertia. And just to me, there is like this unbelievable amount of infrastructure in place for corn and soybeans, and that's just not the case for these alternative crops. So we have to develop our supply chains and markets, and I think, Forever Green knows that. So I think that's enlightened.
Question from the audience here. What are academic and NGO institutions? Obviously, we have a fairly diverse audience here, but a fair amount of university and NGO folks. What are they not truly hearing about CLC crop adoption from a farmer's perspective? And kind of more broadly, how can an organization like Forever Green partner with farmers, not necessarily you, it could be neighbors, et cetera, to innovate and break down those barriers to scaling this type of agriculture?
I would say the one really key component is demand certainty. And so several times there's been the analogy of the chicken and egg applied to supply and demand. So I think and there are corporations that are out there that are, putting that demand certainty in place. And that like primes the pump, and then then there's certainty for the growers that there's going to be a place for their production to go. I think there was some stories about early adopters, hemp, and there's a lot of hemp sitting in barns right now or consuming storage facilities. So that's for me, that's gonna, and I'm involved with the Perennial Promise Growers Co-op. That's what we're really seeing is if we can have demand certainty, then that we can take back to the growers. Ideally, there's a contract, and we're close to getting that, but I think that's a big one that I see.
I think rooms like this are really great, and they're happening all around Minnesota. Minnesota is a lighthouse, I think, in the Upper Plains, and has a unique model of public-private partnership between the state, land-grant universities, private industry, that I think needs to be amplified and continue to get a real shot in the arm on. And as always, and I would be very remiss, I'm sure my boss Gary would be mad if I didn't say that a farmer's voice needs to be at the table in any of those conversations. And that, that the like real ground truthing, and I spend a lot of my days trouncing on people's ideas and dreams by ground truthing, like what farmers need in that situation. And because there are a lot of great ideas out there, but really being kind of grounded in reality is a really critical component to having success.
I'm not going to disagree with what they all said for sure. That the contract or certainty is really, really important. For instance, we used to grow canning crops, peas in particular, and it was a minimum-based contract, and it certainly made that whole scenario much easier to do, and we welcomed it because agronomically it was incredibly beneficial, and habitat-wise, it increased some habitat things that we were working on at the time. I think that their collaborations, we don't know how lucky we are as living where we do with the NGOs, the university, academia, and industry and farmers. When I travel other places, this doesn't happen. So, and I think just elevating that and hanging on to it, like I said earlier, we still really are in the relationship business. And those relationships stick with you throughout your career. And those are super important, so nurture them. Someone asked me earlier in the day, how do we continue to make the impact in this particular environment, i.e. loss of funding and whatever? We have to hang on to the people. The people that do this work, that sometimes may be the best outcome to get through the next few years.
Well, so here's the thing, the support systems and infrastructure are absolutely critical. That includes two kinds, primarily the institutional infrastructure, which is the NGOs, the Midwest Hazelnut Initiative, Savannah Institute, Forever Green, our organization, the RAA. I mean, we wouldn't have any of these farms deployed if we didn't have the RAA. So that's the institutional. And then we need physical infrastructure, meaning processing facilities and all of that. And then with that infrastructure, I think we need to go to the NGO function 2.0 now, because we have done everything else, curriculum and stuff, and talk to the Delta folks. Sorry if you're still here. And so, sure, all of that is great, right? But here's the big kicker, right? For that operation to pencil out, I need a contract as a farmer. I need to know that when I get that, was it purple corn? Yeah. When that purple corn that I was asked to take a risk on came out of the field, I want to know, and I want an assurance that from a business perspective, I am not going to be left hanging the bag. That can be done by the current nonprofit infrastructure we have in place. But it needs to be a private-public partnership because we need the state to make serious investments. And do you remember when NAFTA came around in 1994 in January? 1994, the TLC. Okay, so did you know that Mexico had a system called the CONASUPO? The CONASUPO was a national network of physical infrastructure where farmers who were trying new things or who had their corn could bring it into the silos and store it, and the government will tag that corn that came in and everything, classify it, and they could retrieve it when they need it without having to hold the bag. And if they wanted to, the CONASUPO would buy it from them and then figure out what to do with it. And if he couldn't sell it, it will dump it if he wanted to, but not the farmer. The farmer was protected. We haven't done that yet. We haven't established that infrastructure here. That's the next stage for us to be able to go with confidence and say to a farmer, would you put 100 acres of this new product? Doesn't matter what product, because we want to test this in the market. And here is the assurance that you are not going to be left hanging the bag and taking all the risk. That's what we're being asked to do. Take all the risk, and maybe, if things work out, that product is going to have a market. Well, guess what? We're still doing it. That's the fascinating thing. I mean, I'm telling you, one of these days, I got to take my own advice and just lay down and wait for the urge to do something to go away. But that's why, for us, we needed the nonprofit first. in order to develop the curriculum, the agronomics, the science, the verification, the protocols, the standards, and all of that, and ensure that when I go to a new farmer or a new food sitting here in the supply chain management goes to a new farmer, we can tell them if you put one production unit, it's going to produce you 1,500 birds per flock. You are going to get free hazelnuts. That is part of the deal. If they have to pay for those hazelnuts, I'm sorry, we're not going to be part of that scheme. We have to, so here what we did was with the continuous living cover, we bought 4,000 hazelnuts and the farmers got it for free. Why? Because we have to have the farmers back. And so this is the next stage in the nonprofit business management. We need to start acting as businesses. That's who we are. We happen to have a nonprofit charter. That doesn't mean we are engaged in charity. We need to start operating as businesses, as charter. And that is our next thing. If we don't do that, we'll be having these conversations. How long ago did we start the conversation about hazelnuts? Anybody remember? It was a very, very long time. And then, namely, yes, it takes.
2000.
Well, I came to Minnesota in 1992, and in 1995, I participated in what was already an ongoing annual conversation about hazelnuts. So, just to give you an idea, and namely, yes, it takes a long time. Does it really have to take that long time to actually secure those contracts? Well, we planted all the hazelnuts that were available, and we did secure those contracts, and we can now build the next layer of infrastructure to ensure that that business infrastructure is in place so that we protect those who are going to be the ones demonstrating and actually ground-proofing, truth-proofing, all of that, so that then the next farmer, the farmer down the road who's just watching and really wondering, should I take this risk, doesn't have to be doing that anymore. I think that's our next frontier. Let's get our business shit together, and we will scale up.
I think that's a beautiful place to stop. Let's give our panelists a big hand.